Hello Yu-Gi-Oh players and welcome to Playing Chain Beat. I'm your host the RJB0 and you have no idea how many takes it took me to stop saying Yu-Gi-Oh in business casual. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the weaknesses of Chain Beat. I'm doing this just because I'd like to divert a little bit from my course of talking about how just awesome and godly Chain Beat is and making it better, because it really doesn't behoove you to just talk about how much I love the deck if there really are some things that legitimately mess the deck up quite a bit. So I'm going to be talking about some of the decks that really screw with Chain Beat and some of the cards that make it really difficult to play the deck or just shut it down altogether. But before I do that, I realize this is kind of a cruel thing to do since you guys are a captive audience, but I'm going to hit you guys with a channel update. So I've been cranking out a lot of these Chain Beat videos, and while that's great, I absolutely love it that these Chain Beat videos are so popular because I love Chain Beat. I'm glad that other people love Chain Beat. I have been kind of ignoring a lot of the old segments that I really like to do, and I know were really popular with you guys as well, and I think I'm going to try and bring that back this month in May. So I think later this week I might be doing a deck review, or maybe some pack openings, although I can't do as many of those for reasons I'll talk about in a second, and even deck profiles and set discussions, things that I just used to do a lot of. I'm going to try and bring back into the show later this month. Speaking of later this month and things that I tried to do before that didn't work out so hot, I finally reached 100 subscribers, yay! And while that doesn't sound that awesome to everybody else in the world, that's awesome to me that I have gotten about as many subscribers as Team Minority gets viewers in 1 minute. Anyway, because the reason why this is awesome for me and awesome for you is because it means that I finally get to do that channel contest that I have been planning on doing and actually announced a while back, but then that kind of fell through because 100 subscribers didn't happen, so I couldn't give away any stuff. And speaking of giving away stuff, I cannot promise that my prize support will be amazing. I may even have to scale down the first place prize a little bit because of shipping costs. Because I am going to be moving out of the house and into my own apartment later on in this summer. So I have to save up a little more money than I had before, which is also why I'm not going to be doing as much packet opening as I used to do. So that's my channel update. Let's get down to the Chain Beat stuff that you came here for. But before I start on the weaknesses of Chain Beat, I'd like to address a couple of things that came up because of previous videos, or I forgot previous videos, and feedback you guys have given me. The first thing I want to talk about is something that I got as a little bit of feedback off of my variance video, which is that a lot of people were concerned that I had totally ignored the Thrasher Orichalcos build of Chain Beat. Now, the thing about the Thrasher Orichalcos build is I basically did address it in a weird roundabout way, and here's why. So the funny thing about the Thrasher Orichalcos build is the only reason why it exists is because of a reporting screw up having to do with an Asian regional, in which a lot of people saw this deck that topped at this big Asian regionally thing, and it was a Chain Beat deck, and what the reporter said was that it used 3 Photon Thrasher in it along with the Seal of Orichalcos. What the problem with that was that the deck itself didn't actually run Photon Thrasher. The Photon monster it ran was Photon Saber Tiger, which I discussed in my variance video, having to do with the Floater Beat build. So, in all reality, the Thrasher Orichalcos build didn't exist until suddenly people jumped on the hype train. This is why the hype train is not always the best thing, is because people will jump on trends that aren't even the greatest things in the world. They just happen because somebody famous did something with it, or because people just thought it would be good, and a lot of people were like, oh, hey, one person did well with this, we're all going to do it well with this. And the reason why I don't think that the Thrasher Orichalcos build over the Saber Tiger Orichalcos build is that great is A, Horn of the Phantom Beast doesn't work with it, and B, Thrasher actually kind of clashes with the deck. Now, I realize that the Rabbit and Thunderbird combo or whatever with Thrasher works pretty well, where you can attack with the Rabbit and attack with the Thunderbird and then banish them both and attack with the Thrasher, but really that's only something good if you opened with the Thrasher, because in order for the Thrasher to do anything good, or to even be on the board, you have to not have any monsters on the board. That means that you can't summon it without vacating your entire field of monsters, which seems really counterproductive to me. I mean, unless you really need a 2600 beater under Orichalcos, Thrasher doesn't do much that the deck doesn't already accomplish on its own. Not to mention the fact that it has absolutely zero compatibility with Compulsory Escape Device, which Photon Saber Tiger, even though it may be weaker than Thrasher, actually has some serious compatibility with Escape Device. So I have been kind of dismissing the Thrasher build just because I don't think Thrasher is good, and the only reason why people seem to think it's good is because of a misreporting having to do with this person who topped at that regional. The next thing I want to talk about is another piece of feedback I got from you guys having to do with running Bear in the deck. Now, while I said before that I don't like running Bear in Chain Beat myself, a lot of people really seem to do that, and that's absolutely fine. Bear is an excellent piece of spot removal. It allows you to get another tanky. You get some serious pluses off of Bear. However, in my opinion, Bear is not actually that great. But I would be going with you guys a lot more had the reasoning for your saying that Bear would be good if your reasoning for saying that it was good wasn't as flawed as it was, because a lot of the feedback that I got was that Bear is great because you can summon it from the graveyard with Blackguard. Now let me take a second to explain to you why that's terrible reasoning. Well, yes, it's great that you can get Bear back from the graveyard with Blackguard. That's awesome. But why would you do that? I mean, if you have Black Garden, you don't need spot removal. You're already making most of your opponent's monsters relatively useless because, you know, you've got a Black Garden. They have attack points. It would take an Obelisk to get over a Thunderbird under Black Garden. Like, the only conceivable thing I could see you needing Bear for is spot removal of a monster whose defense is too high for you to get around it with Thunderbird or whatever. In which case, why would you even need the Bear for that? Because you've already got so much spot removal in this deck. All you need is a Compulsive Escape or a Compulsive Vac, and you've already done the trick. The other reason why I don't like running Bear is because one of the most important anti-meta cards of the format is Macrocosmos, and you're almost always going to be running that in this deck. So you can run one Bear under like 2 Macrocosmos or whatever, and that works, I suppose. It isn't amazing since Macro and Bear clash so hard. But I suppose it works. The reason why it really doesn't work with Black Garden is because if you've got the macros, it's highly unlikely that you're going to have the Bear in the graveyard anyway. Not to mention the fact that you actually have to send the Black Garden to the graveyard to activate its effect, which doesn't work under macro. So, though Bear is an alright choice for the deck, I think the reasoning that you can summon it with Garden is kind of dumb. No offense. So the next thing I want to mention briefly is Breakthrough Skill. It's one thing that I forgot about in the building blocks video, and it's one of my new favorite cards. Now, Breakthrough Skill has been relatively ignored since it came out. Like, a lot of people were like, hey, this is a really awesome card when it was announced. They were really excited about it. And they were like, hey, this is a cool card when it came out, and then nothing happened with it. But this card in trap-heavy decks like Chain Beat actually acts as a much better version of Veiler. Not only can you run it under macro, I mean, it doesn't get its second effect under macro, but you can run it under macro, but you can also negate opponent's effects during any phase of the turn. I think the only time that you can't negate effects with this card is during the damage step. Not to mention it has the Veiler kind of thing where it continues to target even if the monster uses itself as a tribute for its effect. So it's a little better than Fiendish Chain in that way. I do still run a couple Fiendish Chain in a lot of Chain Beat deck, but I'm starting to use this card quite a bit more. The great thing about it is it's also chainable with, which means that it can set off your, your Thunderbird. So those are the cards that I wanted to address before I get started with the weaknesses. Now I realize I've taken up a ton of your time, but the weaknesses part of this is actually relatively short, because I've already talked about Dragosack, which is probably the most difficult deck for this deck to face, because, let's see, it isn't hurt that hard by macro just because it's so easy for it to get rid of macro, and it is just so overwhelming in its power and speed that a stun deck like like Chain Beat is going to have very little effect on this. I've actually talked about this in one of my Taking Down the Top Tier videos, where stun decks are absolutely blown to bits by aggro decks like E-Dragons. It's why Chaos Dragon was so effective against Dino Rabbit. So while macro kind of works for it, things that you're going to really want to think about running for a Chain Beat deck against E-Dragons, things like Chaos Hunter will be really important for Chain Beat. Cards like Mind Drain is one that I've been thinking about, and Soul Drain are both really effective for the E-Dragon matchup. The thing that I really don't like about the fact that E-Dragons come out, only a couple of weeks after Chain Beat because it becomes legal is the fact that once E-Dragons are really popular, that means that siding Imperial Iron Wall is going to become a lot more popular for players, because Imperial Iron Wall works against Prophecy and it works against E-Dragons, as I've talked about in the past. And Imperial Iron Wall, unfortunately, absolutely wrecks Chain Beat. So I think that E-Dragons are really nasty for Chain Beat. There are definitely things you can do against it, but all in all, I'd say that they're your worst matchup, and it means that the odds are really stacked against Chain Beat, because, they're going to have that bad E-Dragon matchup. It's not that bad, but it's pretty bad, and that'll happen until the format when the E-Dragons get the ban hammer, at which point they're probably going to hit Tenki, which will slow down Chain Beat quite a bit. But I think that we can be okay with that matchup if we play really smartly and we know when to use our escape devices and our field clearing and stuff like that. The other bad matchup for the deck is Evil Swarm. It isn't that bad, once again, but the fact that Ophion can protect itself so easily is really it's just it's kind of an issue for the deck, because you can't use your compulses as effectively, your field clearing isn't going to be as effective, and they're going to be constantly running down your monsters, because even under Seal of Orichalcos, Thunderbird doesn't get as big as Ophion, which is a problem, which is why some people really like Thrasher, and I guess that's okay, but I think that there are other things that can kill Evil Swarm for this deck. For instance, my good friend Le Ninja of Karakuri Sazank. I think that he can be really helpful for the deck. Not only that, but really your compulses are going to be your best bet against Evil Swarm. As far as individual cards that really screw up Chain Beat, I think there are just really 3 continuous trap cards that are a major issue. And those are Decree, Skill Drain, and and Imperial Iron Wall. Now, what that means is that you don't really, with the exception of Decree, you really don't have to worry about running into any cards sided against you in E-Dragons, which means that you're free to side in as much as you want against them. But the bad news is it's Decree, and Imperial Iron Wall is becoming really popular. So Decree kills the deck for obvious reasons, which means that you can't run the Dust Tornadoes for Decree that you would normally like to. That would also help you against Fire Fist, but that's okay because you've got macro. So I'd say actually run your 3 MSTs and 2 Twister instead of Dust Tornado, simply because you want to get that Skill Drain, that Imperial Iron Wall off the board, or you want to have answers for it more often than they have the card itself. The final card that really screws up the deck, well, it's a pair of cards really, is Jinzo and Barkion, because they negate a ton of traps. I probably don't even really need to explain to you guys why Jinzo and Barkion are an issue. I think that it means that we may want to start running those Book of Moon in the side deck. It means that we're going to have kind of a nasty Samurai matchup. I think the Frog Monarch matchup is the only thing we need to worry about with Jinzo, but I think that we can get by that just fine. I think Book of Moon would be a good side deck. Once again, I think Sazank is going to be really important for this deck, because it is immune to Forbidden Dress. And those are the things that I can think about having to do with the weaknesses of Chain Beat. If you guys have any other things that you want to talk about, absolutely leave it down in the comments. Otherwise, this is the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys later.